Can I just, why wait for a question? Can I just, I just wanted to add to Kim's question. We work on this all the time, question of the Citgo 6. The special envoy who handles prisoner affairs, Roger Carstens, is brand new, has been in touch with the families. I was in touch with a potential intermediary this week who may be able to help with the regime in Venezuela, whom, for obvious reasons I won't name. But we work on it all the time. And we do think that the spread of COVID-19 in Venezuela should lead the regime to rethink their cases and to let them out.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm just wondering, the families who a lot of us are in communication with have, been kind of on the same page until recently, when we're starting to see a lot of open anger saying that they think that the U.S. has abandoned their relatives. Is there any reason for that other than the fact that things are so dire and they're so nervous? Are they starting to lose hope? Can you give us any kind of context as to the frustration?
I think it's difficult for any of us to put ourselves in their shoes, think about what they're going through, and now made worse by the possibility of disease spreading to their brothers, fathers, husbands. So I don't think it's surprising that they would speak out in great anguish, which we completely understand. We have been trying, we continue to try. The problem, obviously, is this regime, which has unlawfully imprisoned these men, and which, at least until now, won't let them go. And we will continue to try every possibility to get them out.
Is their frustration justified, or do you think you're doing everything you can?
I think we're doing everything we can, but I think if I were in their shoes, I would be frustrated, I would be anguished, and I'd be speaking out too.
Go ahead.
Thank you for doing this. Does the Trump administration still view Guido as the legitimate president
Absolutely.
of Venezuela at this moment in time?
He is the legitimate interim president. He is also the president of the National Assembly, and will be unless some other legitimate arrangement is made, and if it is, then he can start running for president.
But aren't you asking both Guido and Maduro to step aside in order to catapult this process?
Well, last year when the negotiations took place in Barbados, the Norwegian-led round, this proposal for a Council of State was actually made by the Democratic opposition forces, by Juan Guaido's team. That's where we got the idea. And he has said, in fact, he said Sunday night, I think, of course, if it's part of a plan to restore democracy and in the interest of the Venezuelan people, to establish a transitional government, would he step aside? Sure. And in our proposal, we think it's very important that whoever is serving as the interim president in this transitional government not be a candidate for president. Because then, in their fragile system, you've got somebody who's holding power and saying, but I'm going to run a free election. We saw what happened when Nicolas Maduro stole an election in 2018. We want Guaido to establish a transitional government, and under our plan, he is. And according to the polls I've seen, he's very likely to win.
So you guys have been pushing, though, for Guaido to be recognized immediately as the president of Venezuela for over a year. So some will say that this is a recognition of a failure of the initial policy. What's your reaction to that?
Just under 60 countries, including the United States, do recognize him as the only legitimate president of Venezuela. If our transition plan were adopted, there would be a transitional government for however long, 9 months, 12 months, to hold an election in which, I think it's pretty logical, Juan Guaido would be the candidate of the Democratic parties. So we see this as support for Guaido.
Rich, did you have something?
Yeah, Thanks, Morgan, and thanks, Mr. Chambers. Those U.S. allies that have recognized Juan Guaido as the current interim president, do you believe that they are doing enough in this period over the past year? Do you think that Europeans, for example, have maximized their pressure on the Maduro regime?
Well, we'd like to see more European sanctions. The Europeans are not doing economic sanctions, they do personal sanctions. But it's been very slow. I mean, we all know why. They have to get unanimity to make these decisions. But if you look at, well, for example, the last time anybody was sanctioned was around Labor Day. The people who had been involved in the killing of Navy Captain Acosta last summer. That's a long time. And prior to that, it had also been a long time. So the total number of people sanctioned is not very high. We think that's a form of pressure to single out the people who are really contributing most to the repression of the Venezuelan people. We'd like to see more.
I'm sorry, really quickly, on oil prices, do you think they've reached a point where we will significantly start to see much less Russian presence in Venezuela?
Well, we did see this maneuver with Rosneft last week, which I think is a reflection of the collapse of oil prices. Rosneft is now losing money. Its joint ventures can't sell crude oil for a profit. Its trading activities around the world, trying to sell Venezuelan oil, are really in trouble. So what does it do? It basically offloads Venezuela onto what looks like a new 100% government-owned company. We're trying to find out more about that. What is the company? What activities will it undertake? Will it take 100% of what Rosneft is doing or less than that? That's not clear yet, but I think it's a clear reaction to the collapse of oil prices and the oil sector in Venezuela. We're already beginning to see production go down. They're running out of storage spaces because they've been producing and they can't sell the oil anywhere.
Ken, last one.
I was actually going to ask about Rosneft. So just to piggyback on that, how do you measure how much you've narrowed the aperture on the money going to members of the regime between the Rosneft action and the actions last week by DOJ?
Those DOJ actions, I think, don't have an immediate impact on the regime's income. But the collapse of oil prices really does. It's still an oil-based economy. And as production goes down, and then the dollar amount they get per barrel goes down and down and down, and they can't sell because people are looking for example, if you're in Asia, it is cheaper to buy Saudi crude because it's closer. Transportation costs are lower. So I think it's very clear that the amount of money going to the regime is going to be on a pretty steep decline.
Could you quantify that for us in any way, or to be determined?
You'd have to look at oil prices. I mean, at one point, they were producing 3.2 million barrels a day. By the end of last year, it was down to about 750,000. It is probably down to about 500,000 right now. Then look at the oil prices, which have gone way down. And most Venezuelan oil is heavy crude, so it is at an under market price. They've been selling it for a very big discount, maybe $15. So if Brent crude is at 50, they're selling for maybe 35, 30. If Brent crude is at 30, they're not getting very much money. In fact, we think right now, well, let me not say we think. Nicolas Maduro said about a week ago, they're not getting the cost of production. So you can see the impact is enormous.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Guys. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.